today we've got one of my favorite two mic setups. And this is actually kind of a variation on one of the setups I did in the Minimal Miking ebook, The Art of Drumming Volume 1. And it's a mic in front, it's a mic up top. I know if you guys can count, you see there's 3 microphones, but the 2 in the front, I'll get to in a second, but they're just, it's for comparison's sake. But we're only going to use 2. We've got an overhead and we've got our kit front mic. And the overhead mic, I've placed, it's kind of splitting the center of the kick and the beater. So really what I'm trying to do is kind of put it in the middle of everything here. And then the kit front mic is about the same height of the kick drum and kind of angled down. Now, the reason why I'm splitting the overhead mic is I do want to try to keep my cymbals as even as possible. I want to keep the toms as even as possible. And then it comes down to the drummer, because anytime you have a minimal mic setup, the way your drummer or you as a drummer balance the drum set becomes much more important because we have less options after the fact. So I'm trying to get this mic lined up to kind of get everything even and then have how play as even as possible. Now the mic in front of the kit is, this one really you can kind of move around to taste. I like to put them, if I'm running this setup, my favorite spot anyway to start is with the mic about the same height. These are maybe just a couple inches higher than the kick drum is. And I have them angled slightly down going towards the resonant head. And really this is where your kick sound is coming from, but we're also getting some of the nice mid-range from the toms coming out this way, and we're also getting a little bit of depth on the snare there as well. Now the setup I'm going to start with is the ribbon and a condenser. I've got an Audio-Technica 4080 and an Audio-Technica AT4047. And I love this setup. This is not rock like what we did in the tracking rock or some of the other things. This is going to be a bit more open, a bit more organic kind of sounding thing. It's going to have it's going to have some vibe. It's a really neat sound. We have a track that's kind of groovy, funky, little Motown-esque kind of bass line on it. So we're kind of trying to fit that vibe a little bit more with this setup. Then what we're going to do is I'm going to go between the condenser here in the front and the ribbon, because sometimes this can be kind of versatile. If you have just a condenser and a ribbon, you could reverse these. You could go with the condenser out here, the ribbon over the top. I usually stay with the condenser on the top in this kind of setup. I like the way a ribbon gets the low mids right here. But you'll notice when we switch to the condenser, things are kind of brighten up and the low end's going to change quite a bit. Now, we're going to start off with just the microphones and hear the difference. And then I want to show you 1 or 2 ways that I may, beyond just this mic setup, that I may manipulate these mics to get a little bit more mileage or just kind of tweak them out a little bit. We're going to do a little parallel compression and a touch of EQing. All live. None of this will be after the fact. This will all be live playing, so we'll be playing through the parallel compression and whatnot. So anyway, without further ado, Hal, you in there, brother? Come on out. We'll start, actually we're going to start with the overhead as always, because that's kind of the overall picture of the kit. You ready, dude? Mm-hmm. All right, give me a groove, brother. This is just the overhead. Ribbon in the front. Both mics. Up a little bit. So you can hear with the overhead, it sounds, there's nothing necessarily special going on there. It's what we kind of expect from it other than it's mono. But that ribbon in the front, hey, play a groove again. 2, 3, 4. This is something I love about ribbons in the front of a drum set is they have a really tight and punchy low end, and the low mids are really full. but we don't have, because ribbons are naturally kind of roll off on the top, we don't have a lot of the cymbal issues that we would have if the condenser is in the front. Well, just to hear the difference, play that same groove. Start with the ribbon. Ribbon only. I'm going to go to the condenser in the front. So it's quite different, and that's just the two mics in the front. My preference is usually, I would say, to start with the ribbon mic, because I just like the beef, and it creates a little bit more depth, because we're getting with the condenser on the overhead, we're getting more of that mid-range and the high end, and we're getting a little bit of kick drum as well, just because of where the mic is placed and where it's aiming towards. But with the ribbon, it's a whole different low end, and I just feel like it creates this like low end cradle for that overhead mic to just kind of sit right on top of, and it ends up being real cool. So let's go here. Let's pull in both. I'm going to start with this is the ribbon in the front, condenser on the top. Same groove, please, sir. Condenser. So it's a very different vibe between the two. It's obviously a little darker with the ribbon, but like I said, I think it has a little bit more depth, because the condenser in the front is picking up a lot more of the cymbal and our top end than the ribbon is, obviously. And the 4047 isn't an overly bright microphone either. It has a transformer in it, and it really has a pretty smooth top end. But still, when you just have two condensers going, you're going to get a lot more of that. I like ribbons, man. I'm kind of a ribbon freak, if you know what I mean. So first thing, let's start off with, let's hear this with the track. Let's play along with the track. I'm going to pull, this is going to be just the ribbon in the front and the 4047 on the overhead. Well done, Spider-Man. All right, now we're gonna go run this right again. Now I'm gonna take the ribbon out and have our condenser in the front, condenser on the top. So let's do the same thing.
Do you want me to play the right?
No, do exactly what you just did. We'll do that in a second. Here we go. This is condenser, condenser. Nicely done, sir. It's a really different vibe with that, and both of them are actually kind of cool and work. You know, overall, I think this drum sound is much cooler when the track kicks in than when it is by itself, and I think it's pretty cool just by itself. It's this really kind of natural, punchy, fat tone, but when you get it with the track and it has an effect on other instruments, that's what I think the beauty of a cool, unique drum sound comes in. How much credit do I give the Sweet Trident board versus the mics? Nah, that's a good question. I'd say it's a combination of those two things. The console, the Trident is nice and focused and punchy. It's got a great low end on it, and it's what I expect from the Trident. The microphones are two great mics. But I'm going to go one step further, that it starts actually with how and the way he's playing the kit, and we have it tuned up pretty well. And then we're able to maximize what we're getting from the microphones and the console. Because if it didn't sound good, having a nice console isn't going to make it automatically sound good, you know. But I do think that some of that, especially I saw, you know, you can feel the air. So that's a lot of the ribbon mic, but I also think that is a little bit of a testament of it going through this board, because the way it just pushes that, the low end is really cool. But I really think it's more than just the board and just the microphones. I think it starts with the person and the gear that's being played. And then that allows me to pick some nice microphones to capture something unique and cool, and then run through the console. And today everything is through the console. I've got no EQ going right now, no compression. It's just plugged directly into the console. Okay, Mark, that's actually a good comment. So for everybody, if you're not seeing this, he said, I like the toms better with the dual condensers, but the cymbals sound too aggressive. I would probably go with the ribbon also. Now, there's a couple ways you could look at that. One, I could have Hal try to back off the cymbals even more. Matter of fact, can we do that? Can we take one pass? I'll go both condensers again and baby the cymbals as much as you can. The crashes, that is.
That's right.
That's hard, and you're not hitting them very hard. You know what? I'm going to cover one thing real quick. Go grab the crash cymbal bag. See if you can get the 16s, and let's put a smaller cymbal up. Now, one thing, he's actually not hitting them that hard, but those suckers are opening up like crazy, and that does make it a little hard. They do get a little bit aggressive. So one thing you could do, if you have some cymbal options, in this case, sometimes smaller cymbals may work a little bit better, because even if they are hit a little harder, they'll be much quicker. These are, I think, it's an 18 and a 20, if I'm not mistaken. And they're going to open up quite a bit. So we'll let him get the 16s on here and see if that changes anything. At the very least, it's going to sound different. Ooh. Okay, this is interesting. Let's do this track one more time. All right, so I'm going to leave condenser up. Mark, we're still going on your comment to see if this works. So condenser, but we have, what's up now?
Dark energy crash.
That's a 17. What's on the other side?
18.
That's still an 18? Oh, you didn't pull the other 16 out?
It's 8. It was 20.
No, there's a 16602 in there.
Oh, really?
Forget it. Those already sound different. Let's try that. So we are down a step. Definitely different. Actually, I like this better. The cymbals don't take up quite as much space as they did before. So that's one thing. Sometimes don't be afraid to use smaller cymbals. I know a lot of the times nowadays, a lot of guys are going to these big, dry, kind of washy cymbals, but you know what? I've got a handful of 16s and 17s, and that's a 17 and 18. But I have a handful of 16s and 17s that get used quite a bit, because a lot of the times they're very effective. That changed things quite a bit, didn't it? It's also a little easier to baby those because they just don't make as much noise. Okay, so there's our setup. I'm going to go back to our ribbon condenser, our combo overhead, and do a couple things. First off, just play me a straight groove again. EQ in on the ribbon. On. 2, 1, 2. All right, so one thing you can do with that front mic, if you want to clean it up a little bit, because when it's just flat, again, it's about the same height as the kick drum, and it's angled just slightly down. Hey, Tao, do we have a photo of that? So you guys can get a better idea. No, of the kick mics. Yeah, perfect. So Tao's gonna pull up a photo. So there you get a good idea. They're about, like I said, just a hair above the kick drum actually, and they're both angled down towards the kick. Now you can raise these mics up and down a little bit if you want, so if you want to adjust your low end, if you go down a couple more inches, you'll start to use the kick drum as a baffle from the snare and from the hi-hat, and you'll start to emphasize the lows more. If you go up, you'll start to de-emphasize the kick a little bit and start getting more of the toms and more of the snare drum. I tend to, whether it's a 22, 24, 20, no matter what the size, I tend to go about the same height or so, give or take an inch of the kick, and then I like to angle to kind of dial it in. I'll go straight on if I want to get more of the actual kit. I'll angle it down towards the kick if I want to mitigate the snare and stuff just a little bit and emphasize the kick a little bit more. So what I did here with the EQ is I actually put a high pass filter on the ribbon mic at 50 Hertz. And then I took the low shelf of the Trident, which I have at probably around 90 Hertz, 90 or 100 Hertz, and I'm rolling back, taking more low end away, about a good maybe 3 or 4 dB, and then I'm pushing a bunch of around about 5 dB of around 120, and I'm also pushing about 4 or 5 dB of, say, 2 or 3K. So here, play, so you can hear it. Play the groove again. No EQ. On. Off. On. 1, 2, 3. So you can hear it changes the note a lot. It actually makes the note a little bit shorter and a little tighter. And because I'm boosting some, 3K or so, I'm getting a little bit more from the snare drum. But it focuses the sound a little bit. Not saying that's the best sound for this. I'm just saying that by pulling some of the bottom, we actually tightened up our note. If you don't have a lot of stuff going on, like this track is just 2 simple guitar parts and a bass line, that extra bottom doesn't bother me so much. Now, the next thing, and this is something I do a lot, I love parallel compression. But I like to use it when I'm tracking a lot because I just think there's something about the sound of the kit hitting the compressor when it's being, it's pushing air into a microphone and going, as opposed to once it's in the computer and then doing it. Is it better? I don't know if it's better. I kind of prefer it, so I like to do some of it there. But I also think that just for the session's sake or the music's sake, whether it's just a drummer by himself or you have the whole band or whatever recording together, there's something about dialing in those sounds and getting that vibe set up while you're tracking that just helps everybody kind of get in the mood because you start to hear what it's actually going to sound like. And then by the time you get done with your tracking, man, most of your mix is done already. So what I'm doing is I'm multing the overhead mic with the patchby. Took a patch cable. I went out of channel 2 and into channel 4, so I'm getting the overhead mic on channel 2 of the console and on channel 4. It's easy to do in a patch bay if you're it's half normal that first row because I do this a lot. So that way when I patch into the top row of the patch bay, it's still going down to the bottom and going out, but it's also going to the channel that I'm patching into. If you don't have that, we use these splitters. Like this is an AT4080 This is an 8-to-2 splitter, where you can plug one in and you can split it out to 2 different places. They also make one-off versions of this where it's a 1-to-2, where it's just got 1 channel, but it splits out to 2, or there's an 8-to-3, there's a 1-to-3. A lot of different companies make them. I've used this one for a long time and it works great. This is another way to do it if you don't have a patch bay, where your mic would plug into this and then the output of this would go into your recording interface or console or whatever you're using. Now what I'm going to do with that split is I'm going to leave the overhead, no compression, no EQ. I'm just going to leave it natural, and I'm going to hit it really hard with one of these Warm Audio 1176s. And let's just hear what's going on there. Play me that groove again, brother. Now the setting I have for that, I actually have all the buttons in, so everything's going. I have the attack as slow as it will go and the release as fast as it will go. And I'm hitting the input pretty hard actually. It's a little bit past noon, so I'm having to pull the output down. Now I'm not necessarily going for explosive here. The thing I like when you start hitting that all buttons in hard on this is it actually it tightens things up because the compressor works so quickly. But it adds a little bit of character and a little bit of bite to it. Now what I'm going to do is we're just going to slowly blend this in. So let's go kick and ribbon, play that groove. I'm just going to gently raise up. And really what I'm trying to do is add a little bit more character on top. I don't want it going explosive and catching cymbals too much. And you'll hear when we play this with the track is this, I'm going to leave it in a little bit so it adds a little to the snare and the toms. And it kind of fills that out and matches, to me, for me anyway, it matches our bottom a little bit more. But I don't want the cymbals to start going and get harsh and nasty. So let's do this. I'm going to turn that off. And I'll just pull that in. So I'm going to let him play the first 4 bars. I'm going to turn it on when it goes to 4 chord on the 5th bar. All right, you ready? Here we go. Nicely done, sir, nicely done. So as you can tell, it definitely, it raises everything on the top of the kit. We are getting a little bit more cymbal, but we're also getting a lot more snare drum. And I feel like it starts to kind of cut through a little bit, but we're also getting a little grit, which I like because it adds a little bit more mojo. And I do that a lot with kick drums. I do it a lot with snares. I do it sometimes with toms. We're doing a big rock setup. I may be running kick, snare, and toms to parallel compression. I don't often do cymbal stuff, at least while tracking. I usually leave that away. I like adding some depth, and I don't often do cymbal stuff, but here I am. I'm doing it on the overhead today. So right away, I contradicted myself, and that's okay. We should all do that a lot more when we're recording. But for this, I think it kind of works because it doesn't sound like all of a sudden crunchy compressed. It just adds a little bit of bite and a little bit more presence to the top end of the kit. What do you say we do this one more time, brother? I'm going to leave the parallel compression in. I've got my EQ in on the bottom, which honestly, I'm going to take it out because I kind of like the EQ, no EQ on that ribbon mic, so it's just nice and big. And let's play this sucker out. You ready to do it, Spidey? All right. Until next Wednesday, I wish you all happy recording. Keep it real. We'll see you later.